Hi, everyone. Welcome to our online workshop. This is Goal Setting, Nutrition, and Beyond. I'm Kim Guess. I'm a registered dietitian with Be Well at Work Wellness Program at University Health Services. And we're doing this workshop today because most of us at one point or another have struggled to make a change, or maybe felt frustrated or felt like a failure, or fell off the wagon after making a change. So this could be anything: nutrition related, it could be exercise, finances, stress management, sleep, all kinds of different things. So this class will help you understand why this is so common to kind of struggle with setting goals and making changes, how to break the cycle, and how to set goals that work. So quick disclaimer, this workshop is for educational purposes only. It's not intended to diagnose, treat, or provide a second opinion on any health problem or disease, so please see your healthcare professional for specific medical assistance. Here's what we'll cover today. We're going to talk about why behavior change is hard. And if it was easy, then we probably wouldn't need a workshop on goal setting. We'll also talk about why it's hard to make nutrition changes specifically. And to increase our chances of success, since behavior change is difficult, we'll learn how to set realistic goals that can help you stay on track. And if you'd like, you can follow along in the self-coaching wellness guide throughout this process, and follow along with all the different steps. So that will be linked in the chat. Okay, first let's talk about why behavior change is hard. So I want you to try to think about a time when you tried to change your behavior. And what did you try to change? Did you succeed? Try to think back on something specific you try to change. And as I talk about why behavior change is hard, reflect back on your experience and see if that helps make a little more sense. Maybe if you weren't successful, why it was a challenge. So first of all, we underestimate the process of behavior change, because change isn't just one thing, but a lot of connected things. So, behavior change is complicated and complex because it requires someone to disrupt a current habit while simultaneously fostering a new, possibly unfamiliar set of actions. So sustained change has to consider all the pieces. So if your goal is to order less takeout, it doesn't just mean that you delete the DoorDash app and then boom, you're done, right? You have to think about what you do instead. That probably means that you need to cook more, determining which recipes to use, do the grocery shopping, do the cooking, the cleanup, all of that. So it doesn't mean it's not possible. It just means that we should consider all the pieces so that we can be prepared and plan accordingly. And it also means that we should think about how we can make our goal realistic, so that we can succeed. Another thing that makes behavior change hard is that we tend to have all or nothing thinking. So that means that we might think behavior change is easy, and if we don't succeed easily, we feel like we failed. We might also feel like we need to make a huge change in order to make a difference, but by taking on too much, it makes it even harder to succeed. Next, setbacks are a given. Life will always disrupt your routines. It could be illness, deadlines, family activities, bad weather, stress, celebrations, vacation, work demands, just to name a few. And we tend to be hard on ourselves if we feel like we failed. So just know that setbacks are completely normal, and it's better to prepare for them when, not if, they happen, and also treat ourselves kindly and know how to bounce back. And finally, negative emotions are not good motivators. We tend to think that negative emotions like fear, guilt, or shame will motivate us and keep us motivated. But research actually shows that these are some of the least effective change strategies. So instead, try to keep it positive. What positive emotions or feelings can the behavior change provide? So for example, if a goal is to eat a wider variety of fruit, then something positive is it might make you feel more excited about eating fruit because it's not so boring. And also the fiber can help keep you regular, so it can make you feel better. Okay, so that's why behavior change overall is hard. And since my expertise is specifically nutrition, I want to talk about why it's hard specifically to change what we eat. So there are many reasons why. It's not all about willpower. That's really kind of a myth, honestly. And the first one is really a big one, and that's social determinants of health. These are non-medical factors that influence health outcomes. And there are many, many different social determinants of health, but one specifically related to food and nutrition are income, food security, and proximity to grocery stores. So there are many other determinants of our health, but basically, the point is that a lot of it is out of our control, and there are things that we can control, but just keep that in mind. So here's a quick little quiz question. Maybe you can type your guesses into the chat. What percentage of our overall health do you think is determined by external factors? So I'll give you all a few seconds to maybe guess the percentage of our overall health that's determined by external factors. Some guesses, I see 30%, 40%, 60, 50, 35, 50. You all are pretty much spot on. It's really a range. So, it's very complicated to determine this. It's hard to study, but research shows that it could be somewhere between 30 to 70% of our overall health is determined by external factors. And then the rest is individual, but that actually includes genetics, which, we can't control either. So again, it doesn't mean that your behaviors don't matter, but it's important to know this as a society so that we can work to address the things that have a bigger impact, like having, safe places to buy food in more places across the country, so help people live closer to grocery stores, things like that. Anyway, other things that make it hard to change what we eat. Stress. So stress can change your appetite. It can cause digestive issues. It might make you feel less motivated to cook, just to name a few effects. I'm sure you can think of others. The next one is marketing. Marketing works. That's why companies spend so much money on it. I think the food industry spends billions of dollars every year. I don't know how many billions, but I'm sure it's a lot. The next one is hormones. Hormones are incredibly complex, and they're involved in almost everything our bodies do. Insulin, leptin, ghrelin, thyroid hormones, sex hormones, cortisol. They can affect blood sugar, hunger levels, fat storage, energy levels, metabolism, mood, and much more. So hormones can affect how and what and when we eat and how that food is processed. The next one is sleep. So getting an adequate sleep can actually increase your hunger hormone, ghrelin, and cause cravings. The next one is time. If you have limited time, then you might not feel like you have enough time to cook, shop, do the planning, and maybe it's just easier to get fast food, takeout, or frozen meals. The next one is cravings. So we are actually programmed to crave salt, sugar, and fat. And cravings can be very strong, so that can make it hard, especially if you deprive yourself of a certain food or food group, then it can make those cravings much stronger. Next is family. If you have a partner or children, who does the cooking and the shopping? Do you eat together as a family? Sometimes that can help, sometimes that can make it more difficult. And how do your eating habits affect each other? And then finally, processed foods and fast foods are actually designed to be hyper palatable. So it makes them very craveable, in other words. So I wanted to share this because, like I said on the previous slide, behavior change is very difficult for a variety of reasons. And the biggest problem that I see when people set nutrition goals is that they're goals that are rooted in diet culture or their diet related goals. And I'll talk about what that means. And honestly, that means that usually those types of goals don't work. So that's why I spent so much time on this. And I've noticed when working with people on this that sometimes it can take some convincing. So I'll give you some ideas of goals that can work later on in class. Okay, so I just mentioned diets and diet culture. So let's talk a little bit more about that. So most of us have been on a diet before, if not many diets. In fact, it's very common to try many different diets, which is called yo-yo dieting. And why is that so common? And that's because diets don't work when it comes to long-term change or long-term weight loss. So I'm talking specifically about weight loss diets, not medically necessary diets like gluten-free for someone with celiac disease. And some people might do diets for other reasons, maybe not related to weight loss, but that's very, very common. So that's why I want to address this. So diets are restrictive. So yes, they can lead to weight loss in the short term, but more often than not, they're actually associated with weight gain. In fact, about 2/3 of people regain more weight after a diet. And that's because people can't sustain a restrictive diet for long and they give up. But their metabolism has adjusted to a lower calorie intake and they can easily regain the weight that they lost. And the cycle of losing and gaining weight and repeating that is called weight cycling. And it's actually more harmful to our health than just staying at a consistent weight. Next, diets tend to be negative. And as we discussed a couple of slides ago, things that are negative in nature tend not to be good motivators. And then, of course, on the previous slide, we talked about all the reasons why it's difficult to change what we eat. Oops. Okay, so I'm still talking about what makes this difficult. I'll talk about what works in a few minutes, I promise. But first, I think it's important to touch on diet culture in a class about nutrition goals. It's a really complex topic that probably deserves a semester-long course, not just 5 minutes of a presentation. So we're really just scratching the surface here, and I really encourage you to explore this more on your own. So maybe you can raise your virtual hand in Zoom if you've heard the term diet culture before, or say something in the chat. I don't know if I can see people's hands going up. Okay, there's a few. Yeah, so let me give you a few ideas of what diet culture is. It's many different things. And some of these points are from a dietitian named Christy Harrison, who is an anti-diet dietitian. Fortunately, us dietitians have the name diet in our title, but most of us do not promote, diets for weight loss or anything like that. Okay, so diet culture equates thinness to health and morality, and it makes you feel inferior if you don't look like the impossibly thin ideal. It's also a belief that individuals have full control and responsibility over their health. And as we saw on the previous few slides, that's really not the case. In fact, social determinants of health and external factors play a pretty major role. Diet culture is also so ingrained that we often don't recognize it. And as it says right below, it doesn't just affect people who diet. And by the way, that is a lot of people. An estimated 45 million Americans diet every year. And we spend over $30 billion on diet products annually. So an example of sneaky diet culture that you might hear is saying something like, hey, you lost weight, you look great. And it's intended as a compliment, but it implies that someone didn't look good at a higher weight. And if you think about it, how will they feel if they return to their previous weight? Or what if they lost weight because they were sick or going through a difficult time? And, don't beat yourself up if you've done this. Like I said, it's a normalized part of our culture. You can say that with the best intentions and just not be aware of the effect that it might have. So, going forward, it's better to focus on something intentional, not body related, like maybe complimenting someone's earrings or something work related, like saying, hey, great job on that presentation. So for more examples of how diet culture can show up in our conversations, there are some really great videos called Fat Talk videos that were created by the UHS nutrition outreach workers. And I'll send a link to that at the end. Down on this point here, so diet culture also demonizes certain foods, and in diet culture, food restriction is normalized and even celebrated, and it stems from anti-fatness and fear of becoming fat that's instilled of all of us pretty much from birth. It's just kind of part of our culture for a lot of us. So in terms of demonizing certain foods, I've had people tell me that they don't eat carrots because they're too starchy. And, so that's a good example of diet culture. And, I definitely wouldn't worry about carrots. They're a very nutritious food. And finally, diet culture promotes weight loss as a way to elevate social status, which means that people feel compelled to spend massive amounts of time, energy, and money to shrink their body. And we have nearly a century worth of data showing that almost no one can sustain intentional weight loss for more than a few years. Okay, so that's enough about what doesn't work. Let's talk about what does work. So if you're following along with the Wellness Self-Coaching Guide, step 1 is a wellness assessment. So if you don't have to follow along through this class, but if you want, you can have it open in another window or print it out, or you can just check it out afterwards. But step 1 is thinking about what do you want to change. And since this workshop is focused on nutrition, I'm going to talk mostly about that, but really these principles can be applied to other areas of your life as well. And although my expertise is in nutrition and physical health, I've used these principles in many areas, in fact, or even ones that don't involve behavior change. So a quick example I'll give. It's a little embarrassing, but I needed to change my car battery. So I guess you could say my goal was to get my car battery changed. And I thought it would be easy. I could just go buy it and they would change it, or maybe I could even do it myself. But there were so many complications, and not to get into it, but for example, there was a store that would do it for free. And this was, I guess, last month. And then it rained for 3 weeks and they said they wouldn't do it in the rain. So, something that was out of my control, and a bunch of other things seemed so simple. Anyway, I did finally get it done, but I did kind of have to set goals and break it down into smaller steps, like call different auto shops and see if they could do it for me and figure out times to go. Maybe if I would have followed these steps a little more closely, I would have gotten it done sooner and not been at risk of my car breaking down every time I drove it. But anyway, just an example of how this can be applied. So anyway, if you're here for this workshop, you might be interested in physical health, specifically nutrition, but there are many areas of our wellness that we can set goals upon. So there's some other ideas here, and this assessment can help you figure out which area you want to prioritize. Step 2 is a readiness assessment. And I want to explain a little bit about what that means. So this is the stages of change model, and there are various adaptations, but this is the one I'm going to use today. And it was actually originally based on results from smoking cessation research. So throughout this workshop, I'm going to use the example of eating more plants as a behavior change that someone might want to make. So if I say, I don't really think about what I eat, then I'm probably in the first stage, which is pre-contemplation. But if you're here today, you're probably past the pre-contemplation stage. So if I say, oh, it might benefit my health and my wallet and the planet if I eat more plants, then I'm probably here in contemplation, thinking about it. If I say, oh, I realized I sometimes have plant-based meals without realizing it, and I made a list of those recipes plus a few others to try, then I'm probably here in preparation. If I say I've been eating oatmeal for breakfast or more often and have learned to make a few plant-based dinner recipes, then I'm in the action phase. And if I say, oh, I prepare regularly plant-based breakfasts and lunches and also sometimes dinner, so I'm doing this regularly, then I'm probably here in the maintenance phase. Not all models have relapse. You can probably imagine why that's a stage with smoking cessations. It's really common. But just to have an example for this goal, maybe I say, oh, I went on vacation and there weren't many meatless options, and I was just so tired when I got home that I didn't prepare my usual meatless meals. Then maybe you could consider that relapse. So, people can move through different stages. It's not always the same cycle. It doesn't always go in this order, but that's what we're trying to determine with step 2 of the Wellness Self-Coaching Guide is your readiness to change. Okay, I'm going to give you one more example with rejecting diet culture, because I realize this might be kind of a new concept to a lot of people because it is so ingrained in our culture and the way that we think and the way that we talk and what we hear in the media. And because it's everywhere, it might be really difficult to try to remove yourself from it. So if I say, oh, I'm going to try the keto diet, maybe this will be the diet that works for me, then I must be in pre-contemplation. So I'm thinking, diets are still the way to go. If I say, oh, I keep trying different diets, but none of them work for me, I wonder if there's another option, then I'm here in contemplation. And if I say I'm reading up on anti-diet information and maybe if I get back in touch with my hunger cues, I can eat more intuitively. So I'm thinking about it, getting ready, I'm in preparation. If I say I've been eating intuitively for 6 weeks and I feel less guilt about food, then I'm here in action. And if I say I'm in touch with my hunger cues and regularly feed myself when I feel hungry, then I'm probably here in maintenance. And maybe there's no relapse in this example, but one example of something that could be at least a setback. Remember, I mentioned that setbacks are pretty much a given. I could say, or if I say I visited my family and they used triggering diet talk and they recruited me into their 30-day no sugar challenge, then maybe we would consider that relapse, or maybe it would just be a little bit of a setback. Okay, so moving on, step 3 of the Wellness Self-Coaching Guide. I keep messing up the order. It's the Self-Coaching Wellness Guide, which is linked in the chat if you want to check it out. Step 3 is developing your why. So this is to help you determine how will you or how will achieving that goal make you feel. So on the right are some questions that you can ask yourself. And then on the left, I wrote something about types of motivation. So think about, is your motivation intrinsic or extrinsic? So, it's better to find intrinsic or internal motivation if you can, because then you'll be more likely to succeed if it's something that you really want and something that will do something for you. So for example, an example of intrinsic motivation might be eating more plants. I'm motivated to do that because there are vegetables, beans, and nuts that I just really enjoy, so I'll enjoy eating them. There's inherent satisfaction in that. An example of extrinsic motivation might be saying eating more plants, that's my goal because my partner will be proud if I do, or they will be mad if I don't. So that means that motivation is driven by external rewards or punishment. So I added a few more questions on the right here that are nutrition specific to help you root out diet culture goals. So you can ask yourself these questions about why do you want to change what you eat? And if you say yes to any of these, maybe there's some extrinsic motivation, or the goal is rooted in diet culture and maybe not as likely to be a positive experience or a successful. So this is what the worksheet looks like. This is just a shortened version of like half of the worksheet. And just in the interest of time, we won't go through the whole worksheet or anything. But basically, with my goal here, my example of eating more plants, I wrote that was the specific change that I want to make. And as I mentioned, there's beans and vegetables and also tofu that I really truly enjoy. So I want to eat more of those foods. And then next, I wrote down part of my why. Why do I want to make those changes and why are they important to me? So I wrote, I want to keep my heart healthy because I have a family history of heart disease, and eating lower on the food chain. That means more plant foods versus animal foods. Eating lower on the food chain makes me feel better about my impact on the planet, and I can save money too. So that's the simplified version of that worksheet. There's a little bit more to it. Step 4 of the guide is actual goal setting. So you might have heard of SMART goals, and this is very similar. It's called PACS. So P stands for purposeful, A is attainable, is actually something that's realistic, C, continuous, something that you can, adapt upon or improve upon or adapt as you go along and as you progress and get more used to making a certain change. T is trackable, because tracking is really important for accountability and consistency. And S is specific in terms of, what are the steps you're going to take? What's the timeline? What are all the details of how you're going to make that happen? So something that I like to do when I work with people who are setting goals is ask, on a scale of 1 to 10, how confident are you that you can achieve this goal? And if you say 10, actually, that's great. Then let's keep your goal as it is. If you say 8 or 9, I'll say, okay, that's pretty good, but consider the barriers. And like we mentioned earlier, setbacks that are bound to happen. Life will always get in the way. So, just keep that in mind, or think about what you would do if something gets in the way. And if the confidence is a 7 or less, I would say, how can you make that goal more realistic so that your confidence is at least at an 8? Okay, so on the top here, on the top right, I added an example of a PACS goal using what we're talking about of eating more plants. So I said, I will have at least one plant-based meal a day for the health of my heart, planet, and my wallet. So the first sentence is meaningful, or purposeful, and are realistic, or attainable. I'm defaulting to the SMART acronym. So first sentence, purposeful and attainable. Second sentence is, I will keep track of my work calendar. So that means it's T, trackable. And then finally, I'll start with make ahead oatmeal for breakfast 3 days a week, a bean-based dinner that I already prepare often, once a week, and I'll treat myself to lunch at Brown's once a week. So the third sentence is attainable. It's specific in terms of the steps and the timeline. So for anybody here at Berkeley who doesn't know Brown's, it's a Cal dining restaurant that has a lot of great plant-based options. So maybe you can check it out if you haven't already. Okay, I know this looks like a lot, but I wanted to give you all some ideas of goals that you could set. And it doesn't look quite right. Let me fix that real quick. I'm going to share a different screen. Oops. Okay. Hopefully you can see that all right with the proper fonts. Okay, so after everything I've talked about with why behavior change is hard, why nutrition change is hard, all the issues of diet culture, you might be wondering, what kind of goals should I set that are actually realistic? First, let's talk about some goals that are rooted in diet culture that we probably want to avoid. So it might be something like eating less carbs, skipping breakfast, not eating after 8 p.m., or stopping eating any sweets. So let's go back to the why, what was it, 2 steps ago. Think about how that goal or that change will impact you. If you don't participate in having desserts at celebrations, or never give in to a sugar craving, or not share a treat with your loved ones on holidays or birthdays, and will that feel good to you? Probably not, right? So here are some other goals that are not so diety, for lack of a better word. The first one's cooking at home more often. That can have a lot of positive effects. And it sounds more positive than saying eating out less. Sometimes just the way you frame it makes it more realistic. Next is podcasts. You might listen to podcasts about intuitive eating or dismantling diet culture or fat phobia. Having self-compassion. We tend to be really hard on ourselves, but think about the things that we say to ourselves. Would you say that to a friend or a loved one? So just think about talking to yourself as if you were a friend and being kind. Enjoying cultural foods. That could be foods from your culture that maybe you haven't eaten as much because you feel like they're not as nutritious or don't follow like American healthier standards, but still hopefully are still an important part of your culture, and it's totally okay to eat foods like that. Or maybe it's just exploring foods from another culture. Meal planning can be really helpful. Honoring your hunger or making peace with food. These are concepts from the idea of intuitive eating. Cooking batches of foods you can eat throughout the week, like maybe cooking a big batch of whole grains and ones that you actually enjoy. So if you don't like brown rice, don't pick brown rice. There's all kinds of other grains out there. And then maybe you can repurpose it in different meals throughout the week. Eating more tofu, maybe. In fact, I threw that in there because we have a tofu cooking class next week that's I'm really excited about. I'm going to talk about all different ways to make tofu that are really easy and delicious. Maybe your goal could be to eat more beans. Most people don't eat beans very often, but they're really affordable and nutritious. It could be just adding more color to your plate, which would probably mean more colorful fruits and vegetables. It could be having fruit and nuts available as a snack at home or at work, eating together more often as a family, drinking more water, pre-chopping fruit or vegetables to make it easier for you to eat them or cook them, creating a nicer eating environment, like actually setting the table, maybe with placemats or nice napkins, cloth napkins, whatever, not having distractions, even lighting candles, whatever that means to you. Could be trying new recipes, giving yourself permission to eat versus having restrictions. I think I forgot to put that one on there. Setting healthy boundaries, which could be about fat talk or diet talk. Maybe unfollowing accounts on social media that don't make you feel good about yourself, or that accounts that maybe embrace things like diet culture and promote these messages that we want to try to avoid. Or it could be addressing stress or sleep. So those are just a few examples to give you ideas. So here are some resources that we offer to support your nutrition goals. The first one is the Hunger Satiety Scale. And this might help you get in touch with your hunger and satiety cues. And that can be especially helpful if your goal is related to intuitive eating. So if you want to set a goal about using the scale, an example of how to do that might be to assess your hunger level before dinner 3 days a week. The next is the healthy meal model here. And this is a visual guide to food groups and proportions that are full of beneficial nutrients, can support your health, energy, and satiety. So a goal might be to follow this meal model 4 days a week. So it doesn't mean that every meal should look like this. That's probably not realistic either, but it's just meant to sort of be a guide, a visual guide. Next, we have this meal planner, because meal planning can save you time, money, stress and trips to the grocery store while reducing food waste. If you are new to meal planning, just keep it simple and realistic. Fill it mostly with familiar foods or meals and start with maybe 1 or 2 new recipes a week. You can always increase it from there. You also don't have to do a full meal plan. Maybe you just want to meal plan lunch for the next week. That's totally fine too. And finally, we have Cookwell Berkeley. This is where we have all of our recipes from our past cooking classes, tons of recipes. They are nutritious, tasty, affordable, and great for busy working adults. You can search by class theme or individual recipes by type. They're color-coded for vegan and vegetarian, and most are actually plant-based, and there are other labels in case you have special dietary needs. So a goal might be just trying 1 new recipe a week. And we have cooking classes. We've been doing them for, I don't know, over 10 years now. And a lot of the classes from the last few years are also recorded and available on our virtual programs page. And like I said, we have the tofu class next week. And that will be hybrid. So if you're not on campus, you can still attend. Okay, so step 5 of the self-coaching guide is planning your progress. So there is a worksheet that you can use. It includes tracking daily, weekly, and monthly goals, along with an end of the month reflection. So this is, I think, just the first page of that. But again, tracking your progress helps with accountability and encourages you to continue. It can also help you figure out what works and what doesn't as you go along. So that's totally fine if that happens. You might try some goal that sounds great to you, and then in reality, it doesn't work out for you. That's okay. You can try something different. And finally, don't forget to celebrate your success. Spend time doing something you enjoy. Treat yourself to something on your wish list or something like that to make it fun, and remember to keep it positive. So I completed just the first page using our example goal of eating more plants. And this is just one simple example. As you can see, for the first 3 weeks, I just kept the goal the same because maybe it's something new that I'm working on. And I want to have consistency of these new habits. So I'm just going to keep it simple. Then maybe in week 4, my goal was making ahead oatmeal 3 days a week. So maybe in week 4, I do it 4 days a week. And then in week 5, I added 1 extra lunch. So maybe it could just be leftovers from dinner, something easy like a salad that doesn't involve any cooking. And then underneath, you can put some ideas of daily goals or small steps that will help you work towards the goal. So one example is cooking a big pot of beans, dried beans, cooking them from scratch, using them throughout the week, and then just freezing the leftovers. So here are some other resources that might be good follow-up to this workshop. The first one is called I Can. It's a 6-week in-person program that starts on March 16th. And it includes group workouts, fitness testing, and interactive nutrition classes. In fact, there's a grocery store tour and a hands-on cooking class. Really fun. But if you want to continue working on goal setting and learning about diet culture and nutrition changes that actually work, then this is a program that's a little bit more of a commitment, but can help reinforce some of the things that we're talking about today. Then, of course, we have the guide that I've been talking about all throughout the workshop. If you want to give this a try, you should be more prepared now to set goals at work, especially if your goals are around nutrition. And then we have all kinds of workshops. Like I mentioned, the Tasty Tofu cooking classes next Wednesday. We have a cardio kickboxing class tomorrow. Tomorrow's Friday, right? Tomorrow. We also have yoga and much more. I also wanted to mention that when it comes to rejecting diet culture, it can be difficult because, like I mentioned, we're so immersed in it, and we have been for a very long time, probably your entire life. So it's unlikely that I was able to tell you everything that you needed to know in this short presentation when I'm competing with a lifetime of dieting messaging. So, I do this for a living as a dietitian, learning about nutrition, continuing to learn about it. But it's even taken me a while to unlearn things. So I encourage you to find ways to reinforce these concepts on a somewhat ongoing basis, because that's what even I've had to do. Maybe reading books, listening to podcasts, following people on social media, signing up for newsletters are just a few ideas so that this can be reinforced. And I created a list of some good accounts to follow, and I will send that out in a follow-up email. I think we'll also link it in the chat. So I want to give a little credit to UC Davis. They did a goal setting workshop that I attended and got some inspiration from. So thank you, UC Davis. And I used Canva for this presentation. And I'm happy to take any questions that you might have. So you can put them in the chat, or you can unmute yourself. And keep in mind, we're still recording, so I'll keep it recording for a little bit. But if you have a question that you don't want recorded, then you can wait till the last few minutes. We'll stop the recording, or just put it in the chat and we won't record that part. Or say it in the chat that you don't want it to be recorded. Will the slides and recording be sent out? Yes. So we will post the recording to our virtual programs page. We have pretty much almost all of our classes from the last few years on there. It sometimes takes a couple whiles to process a video, but we'll get it on there. And I think I can also email the slides. Are there any other questions? Is anybody going to kickboxing tomorrow? Comment about New Year's resolutions. That's why I want to do this workshop towards the beginning of the semester, because January is usually full of New Year's resolutions, which can be very challenging. It can be a challenging time. Do you find intuitive eating a good program? Yes. So that's one of the resources that I linked that I'll send out. Intuitive eating is the idea of, it's a lot of different things, but getting in touch with your hunger, honoring your hunger, I think we mentioned as a nutrition goal, making peace with food. There's a really great book about it. And there are a lot of people, a lot of dietitians who consider themselves intuitive eating dietitians that can have great resources on it, or people that you can work with one-on-one, or maybe take some classes with them if you want to learn more about that.
Kim, can you repeat the name of the book you mentioned by the author Christy Harrison?
Oh, I don't think I mentioned a specific book. But yeah, Christy Harrison is an anti-diet dietitian. I included her on that list. Maybe Thomas, could you link the list of resources again? And I'll be sure to email that as well. But I know she's written a few books.
Thank you.
She has it on her website. Yeah. Any questions? Oh, someone said, I had no idea about the wealth of resources on our nutrition page. So yes, we have all kinds of resources there. Most of the ones that I mentioned, like the meal planning guide, the hunger scale, different websites, a few other handouts we have. They're on our website, uhs.berkeley.edu/nutrition. Thank you for mentioning that. Okay, let's go ahead and stop the recording.